If you're just tuning in for the first time to watch another program, it's hard to begin where to tell you how much has happened today. But the U.S., with the assistance of Britain, in at least one instance, has begun a major attack against the Taliban and the Al-Qaeda network in Afghanistan. And the President and the Secretary of Defense have been very careful to say this is an attack against the Taliban and against Al-Qaeda and Osama bin Laden, not against the people of Afghanistan or against Islam. They've made that point repeatedly. The military operation has been going on for several hours now. There have been about 40 American aircraft and an unknown number of cruise missiles used, launched from the Arabian Sea by both the United States and Britain, against a wide variety of targets about which nobody has been absolutely specific throughout Afghanistan. But there are the numbers we do know. 15 land-based bombers were used, 25 strike aircraft launch from aircraft carriers in the Arabian Gulf, and at least 50 Tomahawk cruise missiles fired from American and British ships, actually a British submarine in this case. The Secretary of Defense has just simply not told us very much beyond that. The operation is underway. So they're not going to tell us about it. We do know, for example, that there have been attacks on virtually every Afghan city or adjacent to every Afghan city. There was an attack north of Kabul. There's been an attack at Kandahar, and the air base in the south, in Herat in the west, in Jalalabad, out by the Pakistani border in the north. And as the Secretary and others have said repeatedly, what they are aiming to do at the moment tonight is to undermine the Taliban, undermine Al-Qaeda in any possible way they can, and give aid and support to the various forces in Afghanistan, the military forces, both in the north and in the south, who are prepared to move on the ground against the Taliban. There's the very broad-based strokes of what they're doing at the moment.
On my orders, the United States military has begun strikes against Al-Qaeda terrorist training camps and military installations of the Taliban regime in Afghanistan. These carefully targeted actions are designed to disrupt the use of Afghanistan as a terrorist base of operations and to attack the military capability of the Taliban regime. We are joined in this operation by our staunch friend, Great Britain. Other close friends, including Canada, Australia, Germany, and France, have pledged forces as the operation unfolds. More than 40 countries in the Middle East, Africa, Europe, and across Asia have granted air transit or landing rights. Many more have shared intelligence. We are supported by the collective will of the world.
In the time I've been Prime Minister, I cannot recall a situation that has commanded so quickly such a powerful coalition of support, and not just from those countries directly involved in military action, but from many others in all parts of the world.
Well, Dan, they've certainly allowed overflights of their territory. We've just before I started speaking to you, we heard and actually saw another plane going overhead, heading in the direction of Afghanistan. And the people here on the ground in Quetta can also hear that. And there have been special prayers in the mosques here, praying for the Taliban, for the success of the Taliban. There's an extra police presence on the street. A lot of security guards have been brought into this hotel where all the foreign press is staying. They seem worried about our security, although we're not particularly. But Pakistan does have a problem. Right here on the border, the people are Pashtun, the same as the Taliban. There's a lot of support for them. And Pakistan sees everything through the prism of its relations with India. And Fuad was saying before that the Indians are known or seen to back the Northern Alliance. That troubles Pakistan an awful lot. That's something that Pakistani commentators, both pro and anti-Taliban, have been mentioning. They're very, very concerned that too much emphasis will be placed on the Northern Alliance. Now, I don't think that the government here, run by General Musharraf, is in any danger of falling at the moment, but they do have to bear in mind what's going on in the street. General Musharraf has been almost apologetic in his addresses to his people, saying, you know, we had no choice but to stand on that side. He's been a little more forceful in recent times, but he's always got to tread this fine line. Where does Pakistan stand in terms of national pride and in terms of its struggle with India? And Pakistan also has its own little problem here of an image. You know, it's the old, he may be a bad guy, but he's our bad guy. Well, General Musharraf, you know, barely a year ago, no one was speaking to him because they'd exploded the atomic bomb, that sort of thing. Well, he's tested an atomic device. And now Musharraf is everybody's darling in the West. He's got a problem in that There is terrorism from here. There have been accusations that they're running terrorist organizations in Kashmir. A fair number of Pakistanis are known to be fighting with the Taliban. The intelligence service here actually set up the Taliban in many ways. They have a lot of strong connections. No one's too sure where all their sympathies lie. So the Pakistani government doesn't have an easy ride here. They've got to tread a very fine line. And I think when Secretary Powell comes here next week, he's going to have a major diplomatic effort, a major diplomatic job here, convincing the Pakistanis that they've done the right thing. And it's very, very important that no civilians are hurt in Afghanistan, because that will rouse up the Islamic fervor. It's what bin Laden's been playing to. It's a war against Muslims, against simple, poor people. And the Pakistanis, they will respond to that. So I think it's going to be a question of how much damage is done, how much the humanitarian effort is seen to be helping the people. A lot of things are going to have to be done to shore up the stand that General Musharraf has taken, and also convince the Pakistanis that this is not something they need to fear, that nobody's trying to put in place a government in Afghanistan that's going to be against Pakistan, that's going to be in favor particularly of India. And that's something they have to worry about, Dan.
By the way, we talk a little bit about the unsettled environment in Pakistan. Certainly General Musharraf at the moment is feeling confident enough that earlier today he put under arrest, or at least the military forces put under arrest, one of the most firebrand fundamentalist, careful how we use that word, fundamentalist Muslim preachers in the country, Maulana Rehman, who'd been going around the country very pro-Taliban and making very incendiary speeches both against the leadership in Pakistan for cooperating against the United States and against the United States and pro-Taliban. So it says a little bit there about General Musharraf's confidence at the moment, that in the anticipation or anxiety about major street demonstrations by pro-Taliban forces in Afghanistan, that he was able to put one of the senior clerics under house arrest. Just a couple of other little eyewitness reports from the region. We talked about Herat in Afghanistan, the city in western Afghanistan, closest to the Iranian border. We've had another second report now that says that the airport in Herat was hit. We do not know if there are any Taliban aircraft there, and we do not know whether or not the U.S. particularly wants that airport to be undamaged so that it can be used subsequently, but there was, we're told by eyewitnesses there, a huge explosion at that airport. And this is also true with the airport in Kandahar in southeastern Pakistan, which we talked about earlier. And it's interesting because here we're told the airport building was damaged, but the runway was untouched. And
we have an important part of our command structure in Saudi Arabia, but on the other hand, the monarchy there is, well, I hate to say they're wobbling and wavering, but they certainly are reluctant.
Well, I think the key point there is where we're at in this operation and how much do we need to really be operating from Saudi Arabia. You know, if you take a look at the map of the region, that to be flying combat sorties out of Saudi Arabia in support of an Afghanistan campaign would be a tremendous logistics problem for any kind of a war planner to put together. On the other hand, by allowing us, and it is my understanding, and hopefully it is so, to use the command and control facility that we have put together inside Saudi Arabia is a great aid and a great hope and a great help, because much of what we learned in the Balkans about this new technology that we've been talking about, overhead satellites, instant communications, a thing that we call reach back. Reach back means, in the past, if you wanted to have the ability to do intelligence analysis, photo interpretation, you had to move all those people into the theater. And so that gave you a huge logistics problem, gave you a huge force protection problem. But now, by being able to, in peacetime, build an apparatus that has the links through satellite communication back to the States, you can leave huge portions of this infrastructure back in the United States, and you can truly have a command and control facility that's set up. You don't take those 3 or 4 weeks to get the equipment in and make sure everything's working.
I think the government in Saudi Arabia, I think Saudi Arabia is not menaced. The problem with Bush too, if you will, the problem with this campaign is, in effect, we have a lot of people who come from Bush 1, i.e. the Gulf War of 1990-91. And what they did, they assembled a coalition. They are really, in a way, there's a kind of a desire to go back and replay that old theme. We're going to have a much harder trip this time around in the Muslim world. Public opinion is highly, highly volatile. And the last time, and this is a fundamental point, Dan, the last time they were menaced, these Arab countries were menaced, this time we are menaced. And they can look and they know that they have defeated the fundamentalists in their own countries. They know that they have driven them on the road. The Saudis have, the Tunisians, the Algerians, the Egyptians. Like when we go to Hosni Mubarak and we say, come ride with us, well, he can take a kind of a cynical, sly look at us because he already beat the fundamentalists.
In Egypt.
Absolutely, and he holds us responsible. He holds our liberal laws in Germany, in England, in France, in America, responsible for allowing his enemies to function and giving them harbor and allowing them to shelter behind pluralism and democracy. So we have a very hard job in the Muslim world because these rulers believe that they drove out the fundamentalists and that these guys went to the West and they thrived in the West. One minor footnote. As we talk about the Sudan and Afghanistan and so on, this recent operation, i.e. Muhammad Atta and all these hijackers, came our way for the most part from Hamburg, West Germany. They were there in West Germany. So these Muslim countries can also say, look, what about you guys in the West? Are you willing to take on these fundamentalists? Do you understand that this is not work for Human Rights Watch and human rights groups? Do you know what you're facing? And we must give them convincing answers that we know what this fight is all about.